All right, guys. So I'm sure that at this point you guys have heard the news that the governor has closed schools for the duration of the year, for the remainder, I should say, of the year, which of course has its implications. We all kind of, I think, suspected that that was going to be the case. But maybe some of you are just hearing this now. I don't know. I don't know how well informed you are. So if you haven't heard that, yes, this is going to be our normal for the remainder of the year for my seniors. I will see you at graduation. Unfortunately, I probably won't see you before then. You guys, I think I said this last time. If anyone wants to Skype with me, Zoom with me, or Google Meet or anything like that, or if a group of you want to, if you guys want to talk about things, I'm more than happy to. Even if you want to just um, talk about if it's not even necessarily school related. If you just want to get together and like see people in the from the class, that's something we could possibly do. Just let me know. And we'll work on that. We're going to continue today with fossil fuels. Well, I guess I should announce a few of the things. First off, the school is now mandating that we do an attendance policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on Google Classroom for you guys to read as well. But I'm going to ask you guys to go and basically sign in. You don't have to say your name or anything. But at the time of the class, I need you. So that's 9 o'clock. I'm not mistaken here. Let me make sure. Yeah, 9 o'clock today. I have you guys. Technically from 9 to 10. This will be posted at that point. Hopefully, Google won't fail me and it'll be uploaded. But all you have to do is go onto Google Classroom and say here on the Google Stream page. That's when you log into Google Classroom. That's the first page that you see. Okay, it's right there in front of you. Go to class comment and just say, I don't know, Jake Hewitt is here, just to use an example, or just say here, and I should say see Jake Hewitt right next to it. So do that so that I can know that you at least came and saw the material. I have no proof that you actually viewed the video. I mean, I do have proof that most of you don't, because I think most of my videos have like 8 to 9 views on them or something like that, and I have more than that in the class. So I know that there are some people not watching these videos, and that's a bad choice in my opinion, but it's your choice to make as young adults. It's fine. And I don't really have a way. I guess we could go to Zoom or Google Meet and just have that be the case, where instead of me recording these, I am just talking you through them. But I think this is more valuable, to be completely honest. The reason I like this method is because it's there. You guys can pause this video, you can go eat lunch, come back to it, watch the rest of it. You can do whatever you need to do. You can pause it if I'm going too fast. You can pause it and write the information down and then continue. Or if I'm going too slow, you can even speed it up. Whatever you want to do, it's available to you. I think that there's value in that you can't get from those other platforms. So that's why I prefer this method. If you want to watch it tonight at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can. I don't suggest that, but some of you guys choose to do those types of things. So that's one of the announcements. Make sure that you guys sign in to get credit, because you will be getting participation credit for doing that. So if you don't mark yourself present, I will mark you absent if I didn't hear from your parents, not from you, but from your parents, that you had something going on that day and couldn't be in class from 9 to 10. Which, I mean, like I said, all you have to do is like go on and sign your name, or say here. So it's not like it takes a lot of effort, but maybe you had no access to the internet or something like that. If I get an email from your parents, then it will be excused. However, if I don't get an email, it will be unexcused, which means that will go against your participation grade, which hopefully you guys read that email from Mr. Slaughter, which explains the grading for this quarter. Very different than it's ever been in the past. Okay. I feel like there was one more thing I was going to say. I'm going to still try to update something daily, just to kind of keep us on pace. We still have 1 month remaining and several chapters to get through in that month. So I want to make sure that we get through everything. to kind of make up for lost time with me being on maternity leave and things like that. So I'm going to utilize that to my advantage. You only have to sign in on the days that you have class. Okay. Now I expect that if I posted something, let's say I post something tomorrow where you guys don't have a class, it's not due necessarily until the following day anyway. So as long as you get to me in a timely manner, we should be fine. I don't put hard dates usually on most of these things because it's hard to enforce regardless, and I don't want to give you guys zeros for stuff. But just make sure that you're not taking advantage of that, and we should be fine. Okay, but you don't have to sign in tomorrow and say that you were here. You can do it obviously the next day. Okay, and just make sure you catch up with everything when you need to. Lastly, today we'll have a little lecture question. So make sure that you guys make sure you guys listen to it, get that question. It'll probably be early in the lecture, and then make sure that you write that down. When I put this video, when I link this video in Google Classroom, I will make it an assignment. So that means that you will put the answer to that question in that assignment category. So you will go to the classwork tab, you will find this video linked, and you will then upload the answer to the question there. So not only do I have you guys signing in saying that you saw, you were present for today, but also you will then basically answer the question so that I know that you watched the video for today. And I haven't put a grade in for that in a while, so I need to do that. So make sure that you guys answer the question for today. Hopefully I'll remember to put it in there. So let's go ahead and pray real quick, and then we'll get going. Lord God, Father of heaven and earth, I just pray that you be with us today. I pray, Lord, that in light of the news that we are not going to be coming back to school, that you help us in this new way of learning, that, Lord, you be with us in our studies, that you help us to prepare for this AP exam, the shortened form AP exam that we have to take. And, Lord, that you help us to do well. That you give us strength, that you give us hopefully sanity as we kind of continue to stay inside and not go to many places, Lord, outside of our homes. I just ask that you help us to use this time to reflect inwardly on you and your scripture, and help us to grow closer, Lord, in this crazy time to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so we're going to talk about fuel choices today. I don't have a huge, long video for us. I'm sure you guys are okay with that. We're going to start with coal, the most abundant of all of our natural resources, at least here in the United States. We and China actually have really high abundancy of coal. Illinois in particular has a huge, basically all of Illinois is a coal reserve. So it is a solid fuel source, which has its advantages and disadvantages. Most of our infrastructure is actually set up for any sort of liquid fuel source. So something that can flow, I shouldn't say liquid, it's liquid or gas, at low viscosity. Coal, it cannot flow. So it doesn't work in pipes the way that petroleum does or natural gas does. But it's so stable as a solid that it's easy to transport still. We can put it on trucks. Most of the time, though, when you see coal, you're going to see it on train. Train car is the most common way that coal is trucked throughout the United States. It's the second most commonly used fuel source. Even though it's our most abundant, we use it only the second most amount. Our primary one, of course, is petroleum. Okay, half of that going into transportation. And that's because coal, the main reason there, I think it's driven by transportation more than anything. Coal doesn't burn nearly as quickly. It's much more of a sustained burn. That's why you can have coal burners that actually heat your home, because it doesn't take a lot of coal to heat your home for an entire day. It's a very slow, consistent burn. Good for some applications, not good for others. Okay, when it comes to cars, you need quick, complete combustion that creates a lot of high-intensity energy and then is done. Okay, the reason that your fuel injectors will spray fuel into the cylinder head every single stroke is because it takes that much fuel every stroke to cause the explosion. Once the explosion occurs, there needs to be a replenishment of that fuel source in order for the explosion to occur again. Okay, coal's not really that way. It doesn't explode. It's not an explosive combustion. It is like I said, a sustained burn. So coal is very energy dense. It's not quite as dense as as petroleum, but still very energy dense. And it's safe to handle. Like I said, you don't want to get gasoline necessarily. You don't want to fall into a pit of gasoline. It wouldn't be good for you. But if you fell into a pit of coal, it wouldn't feel good probably, but it wouldn't hurt you. It's not going to, the hydrocarbons in the coal are just really stable. They're in this crystalline form that makes them more stable. So it's safe to handle. And it needs very little refining. When it comes out of the mine, it's basically dusted off. It's washed. It's cleaned. And other than that, it's done. Okay? It doesn't require the kind of refining process that any sort of petroleum-based stuff is. Crude oil even is not, petroleum's not crude oil. We learned in this chapter. Oil, or petroleum rather, that's extracted from the ground becomes oil. Okay, so just to get to that next step of what we would consider regular crude oil, a refining process has to take place. So some of the cons, though, it's not all good. Okay, some of the cons is, of course, mine tailings. There's lots of, with all of these, extraction is a problem. They contain sulfur. With all of these, sulfur loves hydrocarbons. So sulfur is always an issue. Sulfur becomes sulfur dioxide in the air. It's really bad for us to breathe. It's a greenhouse gas. Not good stuff. It needs to be washed, which means water is always consumed in these processes as well. So water is used, and that water is not is contaminated then with the coal. It creates ash when it's burned. We have huge issues with what to do with all of this byproduct. And it, of course, has air pollution associated with it. When you combust anything, air pollution is always going to be there. However, coal is a particularly dirty fuel, which is why nobody likes to use it. Petroleum's actually a little bit cleaner than coal, simply because it has less sulfur, so it makes less sulfur dioxide. But it has its pros and cons as well. I don't know why the cons list doesn't have a con up at the top, but this is the pro. This is the con, so hopefully you guys kind of get that. This is what petroleum, raw petroleum, looks like. It looks a lot like crude oil, what we think of when we think of crude oil. It's just a little bit more viscous. So it has to be refined, which means basically distilled into oil. And then through that distilling process, oil's at the bottom, and of course, kerosene's usually at the very top. And gasoline somewhere in the middle there, jet fuel, things like that. The grades of gasoline. The big thing here is that it's a liquid. It's a liquid mix of lots of hydrocarbons. By the way, I've said that term a couple times. A hydrocarbon is a large chain of carbon atoms that have a bunch of hydrogens connected to them with hydrogen bonds. Okay, and the great thing about those is that every time you break a carbon chain down into a smaller carbon molecule, the breaking of that bond releases energy. So when you burn a hydrocarbon, what you're doing is you're breaking the bonds of that long chain of carbons, and because there's lots of bonds, there's lots of energy to be absorbed through the breaking of those bonds. So through combustion, it's broken down, and all of the energy locked in those bonds that have been locked there for millions of years is going to be released. Where did that energy come from? We talked about that earlier in this year. It came from the sun, okay, because oil is nothing more than really, really old plants, okay? There were time periods that the earth experienced lots of plant growth, huge plants, ferns the size of my desk, if you can imagine that, trees that had trunks on them that were just ridiculously large. A lot of those trees probably fossilized in the coal rather than oil. It was that really the leafy green vegetation that becomes the oil through lots of years of pressure and heat. But the thing that we love about oil as opposed to coal is that it flows. Okay. Not only that, it can also be refined. The world has an obsession with it. We use 4 billion gallons of petroleum a day. Okay. That's not per year. That's not even per month. That is per day. Right now, I would say global production is down tremendously. That's why you guys can go get gasoline right now for like $1.99 or something like that. I haven't seen under $2 since I was in high school. Okay. Now you guys don't know exactly how long that's been, but it's been a while. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. You probably will never see prices like this again. So go and obviously we don't have a lot of reason to go a lot of places, but go and get fuel if you need to, because it's just really cheap right now. But that fuel that you're pumping into your gas tank was created using really old petroleum. Now, these are all, it also has a really high energy density, and like I said earlier, it burns really quickly, which makes it ideal for transportation. We need quick, fast combustion in order for that to happen. However, there are some downsides. Of course, as I said earlier, it contains sulfur. All of these do, but it also even contains a few of these heavy elements, including mercury, lead, and arsenic. None of these are good for you. Okay, lead and mercury will poison you. Well, so will arsenic. Arsenic is poison. So, also, if it can flow, I've hailed that as a pro for this entire time. But if it can flow, that means it can also spill. Okay, so and of course we've had lots of oil spills in the past. Oh man, like no, 3-4 years ago, we had that big spill in the Gulf of Mexico. I can't remember what the tanker was called, but I went to Texas that summer. I go to Texas a lot. I've told you guys that. And I went to Texas that summer. Went to South Padre Island, and we went to the beach, and there were these splotches of oil, okay, all over the beach, and you could actually like pick them up. They had been cooled down by the ocean, so they were in these sort of blobs. They weren't as liquid as this, much more viscous. You could pick them up, and you'd get them on you. And if you went swimming or if you just stepped on it, it would kind of cake onto your skin. And I know what you're thinking, like, why did you go swimming? Well, we were on vacation. It was, it was the thing to do. So, and it wasn't, like we didn't see a lot of it. It wasn't all over the place. But in certain parts of the beach, it was kind of all over the place. And it created this black sand in certain places. I mean, it really was bad. It was a horrible thing. And the only reason that's possible is because of the ability for it to flow. If we had coal out in the ocean, if we had to extract it through the ocean for whatever reason, it would never do this. Okay, if we accidentally spilled it, if the tanker broke, if you will, the coal would just float down to the bottom. Okay, it wouldn't spill out in the way that oil does. And extraction, of course, is bad for the environment. So, I want to show you guys this video. I don't think that we've watched any engineering explain. I think I mentioned it last time, how this guy's really, if you're interested in engineering, he does a great job of explaining certain aspects of engineering, and he always kind of focuses. He has a focus on transportation. So I'm going to explain, or he's going to explain, I should say. We're not going to watch the whole video, but why engines and oil in particular, gasoline, is not going anywhere. So as much as I love the idea of an electric vehicle, as much as this individual loves the idea of an electric vehicle, the gas-powered engine is still, and the production of oil is still very much real in our lives, and it will remain there.
Hello everyone, and welcome. According to the industry that has made a ton of money selling combustion engines, the combustion engine is going nowhere. And of course they'd say that, but here's the thing, they're right. So in this video, I want to discuss why the combustion engine still has a long life ahead of it and some of the challenges facing electric cars. And I want to be clear about my goal. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy an electric car. I bought an electric car and I think they're great. My goal with this video is to provide you with evidence that there are still many good reasons to continue improving combustion engines. So a common comment I get on this channel whenever I'm talking about a new piece of internal combustion engine technology is, why would the manufacturer continue to develop the combustion engine when we know the future is electric and when they could be investing that money in electric cars? So a big part of this video is for selfish reasons. So the next time that someone in the comments is bashing combustion engines, I can say, hey, there still are good reasons why they exist. Here's the link. Because I'm certainly going to continue making videos about cool and interesting combustion technology, as well as technology involving electric cars. So we're going to divide the video into 4 categories: the science, the environment, the cost, and the consumer. In each category, we'll discuss the associated challenges. Okay, so let's start off with science. From a physics standpoint, the biggest challenge currently facing electric cars is energy density. In other words, how much energy can you put into a certain space? So here I have a gallon of water. Now, according to the EPA, if this was a gallon of gasoline, it would have the equivalent of 33.7 kilowatt hours of energy in it. So in just this 1 gallon of gasoline, there is more energy than in the entire battery of the first generation Nissan Leaf. Now, times have changed. Batteries have improved since the first generation Nissan Leaf. So I found a study in 2018 that was looking at 8 different lithium-ion battery manufacturers, and of them, I looked at what was the best energy density they found in a lithium-ion battery cell. That number was 684 watt hours per liter. So I want to provide a visual demonstration of what that means. So here we have a gallon of gas, and now what I want to see is how much space do we need in order to have that same amount of energy, but in the form of lithium-ion batteries. And we're going to do that using cans of LaCroix. Not because I'm sponsored, this isn't sponsored, I'm just basic. And so if you do the math, which of course I did, the equivalent energy by volume of 1 gallon of gasoline, you would need 139 cans of LaCroix representing our lithium-ion batteries. Now, this is more than just an elaborate plan to make my groceries tax deductible. This is wild to look at. By volume, gasoline is 13 times more energy dense than the best of lithium-ion batteries in 2018. And you might be saying to yourself, well, this isn't really that fair of a comparison visually because all of the gasoline is tucked away in one nice little convenient spot, whereas the lithium-ion is spread out in all these individual cells. But that's kind of the point, because gasoline just goes into a tank and it just sits in one spot. Batteries are made up of thousands of individual cells which aren't that space efficient. So keep in mind what we're looking at here is the volume required for just the cells. This doesn't take into any consideration cell connections, wiring, cooling routing that's going through these batteries, and the overall structure that's holding these all together. So the space is actually going to be much larger than what you see here. And on top of that, remember, we're looking at the best example from a study in 2018. If we were to look at the worst example, the energy density was less than half, and that would mean we would double what you see here just to have the same amount of energy as 1 gallon of gasoline by volume. Now, so far we've just talked about volume, and of course volume is important for packaging within a car. So if previously you only needed this much space, but now you need this much space, well, then obviously you have a bit of a problem because you either have to take away from existing space within the vehicle or your vehicle has to be larger to fit all of that energy. But we haven't yet touched on weight, and this is where gasoline has an even larger advantage. So 1 gallon of gasoline weighs about 6 pounds, and it has the equivalent energy of 33.7 kilowatt hours. Now, from that same study I looked at previously, the best battery's energy density was about 240 watt hours per kilogram. What does that mean? Well, if this can were to be gasoline, represented here by LaCroix's best flavor, Pamplemousie, then it would weigh 50 times less than the equivalent amount of energy in lithium-ion form. And remember, this is just talking about the battery cells. The battery pack itself would be even heavier. So if you're to look at a gallon of gasoline that weighs 6 pounds, this has more energy in it than the original Leaf's battery pack, which weighed over 600 pounds, over 100 times heavier for less energy. So why is this a problem? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do with that battery. If you have a lithium-ion battery pack at your house as a backup energy source for when the power goes out, it's not really a problem. You don't care how much space it takes up, you don't care how heavy it is, it's just sitting somewhere and it's able to help you out. If you then stick it in a car, however, it means that car is significantly heavier. And the larger the item that gets, kind of the more detrimental it becomes to that object. So think about a plane or a train or big freight trucks or when you're towing. So these are scenarios where it becomes challenging because of how much a lithium-ion battery pack weighs. So if you were to think about a plane, for example, it's trying to fly, it needs to be as light and as compact as possible. So if you were to have enough batteries on board that the thing could actually fly somewhere, it would take up all of the space within it, and you wouldn't have any additional weight allowed for passengers. The thing would just be full of batteries, it'd be really heavy, and sure, it would fly somewhere, but it wouldn't take anybody with it, and it wouldn't go very far. So right now, we're really in the sweet spot where passenger cars make sense, but things larger than that don't quite yet. The good news is battery technology continues to improve. So as that battery technology continues to improve, the battery itself will take up less space and it will weigh less, and eventually we'll get closer and closer towards what we have with gasoline. We're not going to get here, but we can reduce it and it can improve significantly. We're just not there yet. So what does that mean? Well, if there are applications today that currently require combustion engines, we might as well make those combustion engines as clean and as good and as efficient as possible while we still need them. Okay, so now let's talk about cost. And there are two issues here. So first of all, electric cars are expensive. According to this automotive engineering magazine from SAE, electric cars are about $12,000 more for the initial purchase price. So yes, the maintenance costs and the operating costs are going to end up being lower, but that initial purchase price is significantly higher, and so because of that, a lot of people avoid buying them. Now, part of this is a chicken and egg scenario because not many people are buying electric cars, not many electric cars are produced, and because not many electric cars are produced, they're very expensive. Economies of scale. The more you make, the cheaper they become. So in this scenario, if more people bought electric cars, they'd be cheaper, but more people can't buy electric cars because they're too expensive. Now, I want to be very clear in that I don't think the initial purchase price is the big deterrent from electric cars. I don't think that's the big reason why we don't see mass adoption. And reason being is that if the only thing people were concerned about when buying a new car was total cost of ownership, we'd all just be driving old 90s Honda Civics, and we're not. We buy new toys. Car buying is a very emotional experience. It's not a logical experience. And because of that, all of the luxury brands exist. If all of us only thought about total cost of ownership, no luxury brand, period, would exist. No fun cars would exist. We just have all the boring, simple machines that could get us from point A to point B that cost us the least amount. But people buy things that they enjoy, and so because of that reason, I don't think it's that strong of an argument that cost alone is what is keeping people out of electric cars. However, where cost does get involved, and where I think this does play a role, is in terms of profit for the manufacturers. According to a study by Alex Partners, in order for an electric car to be profitable today, it needs to cost $48,000, quite a bit. And the powertrain cost for that electric car is about $16,000 for a long-range EV versus about $6,500 for a combustion car. So think about this. If you're a manufacturer and you want to sell a car to a customer for $30,000, you can make significantly more profit if you sell that $30,000 car as a combustion car versus an electric car. And for better or worse, manufacturers are going to follow what makes them profitable. And in this case, it's combustion engines. All right, so let's move on to the environment and talk about why we should be improving internal combustion engines. So according to this reading, there's going to be about 2 to 3 billion internal combustion engines sold between now and 2045. That alone sounds like a pretty good reason to improve them and make them better. If we're going to sell that many anyways, they might as well be as clean as possible. But let's look at it from a manufacturer's point of view. You knew I was going to work a whiteboard into this video. So let's say you're a small car manufacturer with a hypothetical name, something like Mazda. And your goal for your company is to improve your overall emissions. And so you're a small company, you don't have a ton of money, and so you have to make a decision of what do you want to do with that research and development money. Do you want to put it into an electric car, or do you want to improve your combustion cars? So let's say you choose to create an electric car, and that ends up accounting for about 10% of your sales, which is actually an optimistic number based on today's sales data. And those 10%, thankfully, these electric cars are twice as emissions friendly life cycle versus the combustion cars. Great, you've improved them, but it's only 10% of your sales, so your overall emissions are only reduced by 5% because you still have 90% of your cars unchanged. Well, then you can also choose to, instead of spending that money on developing an electric car, to develop a better internal combustion engine and create a new technology that reduces emissions by, let's say, 10%. 10% isn't a crazy number to improve emissions by. Now, because all of your vehicles are combustion engines, that 10% applies across the board, and that means you have an overall emission savings of 10%. So it was actually cleaner and likely much more profitable for your business to develop a new internal combustion engine technology than to go the EV route. And part of this, yes, is due to consumer choice, Which brings us to our last point. Finally, let's talk about consumer.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Unfortunately, he goes off on a little bit more into more detail, but it doesn't fit with the class as much. If you want to watch the rest of it, again, Engineering Explained on YouTube, he does a great job with lots of topics. So this is going to be a longer video. I'm sorry. I really want to get through at least these fossil fuels. I'll go through them fast. Fossil fuel. The first one we're going to talk, or the next one we're going to talk about, I should say, is natural gas. The second most commonly used. That's not true. I'm sorry. The third most commonly used here in the United States. It's found alongside petroleum. That's why we used to actually bleed it off. We didn't capture it. We just let it go out into the air. And then at some point we realized this is a flammable gas that we could capture and we could use for lots of different industries. In fact, electricity generation and just industry, meaning it's used for the production of other things. For example, fertilizer. Have caught on, and this has become a very sought after fuel source. It has no sulfur, so we don't have to worry about that. And just like petroleum, it can flow, so it can be piped to different things. However, there are some cons because it can flow. It can be spilled, and instead of being spilled out and falling into the ocean or onto the ground and becoming an issue that way, it goes out into the atmosphere where it becomes an incredibly damaging greenhouse gas, which captures a lot more thermal energy than carbon dioxide. So it's very bad for the environment in that way. And it's also, if you're going specifically to get methane, or well, it is methane primarily, but natural gas, it's a combination of methane with other gases. If you're trying to get methane out of the ground, the extraction process of choice is fracking, and we've already talked about fracking and the dangers that it poses to mainly the water supply, but also just the stability of a town in which fracking is done. Okay. A couple oddball ones. One that shouldn't be necessarily oddball because we're utilizing it here at our Phillips 66 plant, which is the oil sands project that they just finished. I say just. They finished it, I think, like 7 years ago. And liquid coal. Both of these are important to us because oil sands extends the life of petroleum. It enables us to expand our oil fields. We have oil fields in places like Texas, for example, but there's lots of oil sand fields in North America as a whole, but a lot of them in the northern part of the United States as well as Canada. And we have lots of partnerships with Canada. We import and export a lot of things for both countries. So this is a good thing for us. It means that it cuts our dependence on foreign oil. I know coal or Canada is foreign, but it cuts our dependence from Middle Eastern oil, I should say. It's very viscous. It's made of bitumen, which is a degraded type. I don't know if it's bitumen or bitumen. I would assume bitumen, but I'm not sure. It's a degraded type of petroleum. It's mixed with clay, sand, and water, so it's not very flowable. That's a word. It doesn't flow. And we have to dilute it. To enable it to flow, we have to put water into it so it's able to be pumped through pipeline. Most of the sands, almost I think all of the sands that we get here in Wood River refinery is pumped in through fields in Canada, which is crazy. It's a lot of pipeline. Liquid coal is a newer technology that uses CTL, which is a process of changing coal to liquid. They weren't very thoughtful when they came up with that name. It wasn't very creative. This is important to us because this process, even though it's been around since World War II, it's something that we've been looking into more and more. While it's not environmentally friendly at all, it is very cost effective, and we just have so much coal that it enables us to use coal in a more effective way like we do petroleum. So if we can do that, it's definitely going to be a benefit to us and our economy. So last one, I believe. Yeah, last slide is this guy right here. It's showing the Hubbert's curve, which is a really old graph that was presented in the 60s by, I think what was his name? Albert? I can't remember. I think it's Albert Hubbert. This guy came up with this theory, basically, where he estimated that oil extraction and use, that should be wood, sorry, would increase steadily until roughly half the supply had been used. And he called that oil peak. All right, so his idea was that as soon as we got to about half the supply, our production would start to decline. And that means our use would start to decline. And he's actually been fairly accurate. He originally thought that it was going to be in the 60s. Man, was it 59? I can't remember. But he thought it was going to be in the 60s, but it actually was 1970 that this occurred, where we reached our oil peak. We were creating the most amount of barrels per day. And now, since that moment, we've been on a decline. Now, here recently, in the last decade, I don't know if you guys can see this on the video here, but we have this slight increase. And that increase has been us creating more oil because we're trying to wean our reliance on foreign oil. We've been doing that for the last 10 years or so. So our production has actually increased going away from this curve. We'll see if that levels back off and it continues to drop. I think that it will, because again, oil is being disrupted right now. The industry is being disrupted by things like electric vehicles. Remember, when half of your oil production goes to transportation, and you can change the way that transportation is done via electric cars rather than gas-powered cars, you're going to see that level off and I think continue to drop. However, just as engineering explained, the need for combustion engines is not going away anytime soon. If you guys want to fly from one place to the next, we have to have a jet engine. Okay, there's just no way around it. So we'll see kind of what happens with Hubbard's curve as we go on. That was in 1997 that we started to see that peak, and it has actually continued to rise, but I think it's now on the decline again. So this will be the end of it, guys. Again, I'm sorry I went 10 minutes longer than I wanted to. I hope everybody's doing all right. Hope you guys are staying healthy. Let me know what you need, okay, and I will try my best to answer you. This will be posted, I would assume, in about an hour, hopefully without any issues. Make sure, the question for today. What is Mr. Eddie's favorite food? Fried chicken is definitely my favorite food. So make sure that you guys get that down in the assignment so you get credit for watching this lecture. Talk to you guys next time. Bye.